Hello everybody, welcome to a brand new season of The Toy Shelf. I'm your host Mitch Live, and I collect action figures. We are web-slinging right into Season 3 with my favorite Marvel superhero, the Amazing Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man. Or if you're a bad guy, Spider-Man with an A. Spider-Man! I'm gonna get you, Spider-Man. It's the Spider-Man. Or webhead or wall crawler. Such creative insults. You know, now that I think about it, seems like kind of a bit of a red flag kicking off Season 3 with Spider-Man, considering Spider-Man 3 is the worst superhero movie ever made. That's just my personal opinion. Don't at me, okay? And don't get me wrong, the Sam Raimi / Tobey Maguire Spider-Man franchise was lit. Until it wasn't. The moment they started doing this, sorry, you lost me right there. Thankfully, Spider-Man is cool again, thanks to Tom Holland and the MCU. And I am fully on board with this new Spider-Man. Not picking favorites! Of course, this character has been around for decades and with many variations. My first introduction to this character was that old school cartoon with the classic theme song. You know, Spider-Man, Spider-Man does a couple things that a spider can. Spins a web with some help. Sticks to walls. That's pretty much it. Watch out! Here comes the man that's dressed like a spider's web. I guess you're not supposed to think too much about it. It doesn't matter. The 90s animated series was my jam. They even had an epic crossover with the group of persons with enhanced abilities. #woke. That show was awesome when I was a kid, and it was my first Marvel crossover and the first time experiencing a Stan Lee cameo, and they also introduced the Spider-Verse. It set me up to become the Marvel fan that I am today. So this episode is the second part of my Marvel Select collection. The first one features the uncanny group of those people I mentioned earlier, so make sure to check out that one next. Okay, let's look at some toys, shall we? Here we have the Spectacular Spider-Man by Diamond Select Toys. Not the Amazing Spider-Man, or not the Iron Suit Spider-Man, or not the one that's just called Spider-Man, or the other one that's just called Spider-Man, or the other one that's just called Spider-Man. Damn you, alternate versions! What I'm saying is that they make a lot of versions of Spider-Man. But this was my favorite. Mostly because of his posture and the accessories. This just felt the most like Spider-Man to me. He is very poseable, but I've reposed him and played with him and dropped him so many times, he's just not as sturdy as he used to be. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah! Oh. A little piece of him just fell off. His finger just fell off! Would you look at that? That's okay, he's got some alternate hands. The Marvel Select toy line is a 7-inch toy line, and Mr. Parker here stands about 6.5 inches, which is great because Peter Parker is a shorter guy. In fact, one of the things I absolutely adore about this toy line is the accuracy of the scale of each figure. When you look across the spectrum of all the Marvel characters, the short people are short, the tall people are tall, and it just looks like an actual group of dynamic individuals. The accessories that Spider-Man comes with includes a bunch of alternate hands, which is great because I just broke his finger. We've just got some outstretched hands, we got some more web-slinging hands. We're gonna throw Spider-Man around some more, and we've got a bunch of fists. I feel like he's got a lot more fists than he needs. I mean, could use a couple more web-slinging hands. I can't believe his finger just fell off. And he also comes with this camera, because, you know, Peter Parker is a photographer. And one of my favorite details, he comes with an alternate unmasked head and sort of a deflated mask, looking very much like it would if he was holding the mask or if it was just sitting on the ground. It's the deflated mask, so you can pretend like you took off Spider-Man's mask. It's a very good accessory, good. One of the alternates I was looking at did come with like a string of web that looked like it was coming out of his wrist, which would be really badass, but no accessory is worth purchasing the exact same figure for. McFarlane Toys. Sorry, I had something stuck in my throat there. What I was trying to say is, McFarlane Toys. Not like all of them, just the alternates that are literally the exact same figure with a different weapon. You greedy Anyways, next we've got one of our heroes kind of enemies, kind of love interests. She's the stealthy cat burglar in a tight black leather suit who also has the word cat in her name, and she is definitely not a direct ripoff of another cat burglar in tight leather. It's, of course, the Black Cat. The Black Cat, from what I remember, is also taken something very similar to the super soldier serum or some shit, because she's able to throw down and go toe-to-toe even with Spider-Man. Now you might be expecting me to make a comment about her chest and how it's nearly popping out of her suit, but we're more mature than that here on the Toy Shelf, and we respect a person's right to dress however they choose. Her real name is Felicia Hardy, and I know that Mary Jane is supposed to be like the one, or maybe some of you are even on the Gwen Stacy train. Going off the rails on a Stacy train. But I am 100% on Team Felicia. You wouldn't find her helplessly getting herself kidnapped by every f***ing bad guy in New York City. Jesus Christ, Mary Jane, get streetwise or buy a gun already, would ya? This figure also comes with some cool accessories and even a small diorama. This diorama features the outside of a building, and you can get to see a little piece of the room just inside this building. And one of the accessories she comes with is a whole other Spider-Man. And I mean, I know this is an accessory and not a figure because one, he's not posable, and it does not list this as like a 2-pack or anything. And he's got holes on his feet which fit nicely right on the wall. He's just meant to be like sort of spying on the Black Cat here, seeing what she's up to, sort of peeking through that window. Huh? That's pretty cool, huh? Can you see Spider-Man there? Can you see my eye? Pretty cool, eh? She also comes with this safe, which is definitely not her safe. It's the safe she's breaking into. She's a cat burglar. And this safe is absolutely full of loot that is just ripe for the stealing, including this big stack of cash here, a big fancy diamond, some papers what looks like a script, and it has Kevin Smith written on it. I don't know. Is this some sort of nod to like the actual filmmaker Kevin Smith? I don't know. And the last piece of loot that she has is this pearl necklace, which she is made to hold like so. She's not nearly as posable as the other figures from this toy line, but I think she looks great anyways, and the diorama and the accessories kind of makes up for it. Great purchase overall. And, by the way, Black Cat here stands 6.5 inches, pretty much the same height as Peter Parker. To me, what makes a great superhero is iconic supervillains, and Spider-Man has some of the best and most well-known villains, whose true identities usually have some close connection to Peter Parker or each other. Villains like the Green Goblin here. This is, of course, not the only Green Goblin from Diamond Select Damn You alternate versions, but I instantly fell in love with this version of the Green Goblin. The detail and just that super crazed look on his face, and he has the glider, which is an essential part of this character, and it comes with a stand built in. I mean, they could have made it a clear stand, or they could have made the stand literally any other color besides the exact color of the glider so that it doesn't look like it's a part of it, but small complaint. I believe it does pop right off the stand, so you can just have him appear on his glider the way you'd expect. He also comes with his signature weapon, the pumpkin bomb, which he holds delicately like so, and he comes with his big purple bag, which he holds all of his pumpkin bombs in. But here was the real selling point. The other accessory that he comes with is another Spider-Man. Or more like Peter Parker for splitting hairs. But it is a badass looking Peter Parker, and his clothes are all ripped and torn, and you can see the Spider-Man outfit underneath. And clearly he is not looking thrilled being tied up the way he is. And the rope that he's tied with, it's very rope-like. I mean, it's rubbery, it doesn't feel like rope, but it looks and moves like rope, and he's free hanging. And if you pose this figure in such a way where you actually have Peter sort of dangling off the shelf, the Goblin's center of gravity is actually strong enough that he can remain standing while Peter just like dangles off your shelf. It's definitely one of my favorite Spider-Man villains and one of my favorite pieces from this collection. Another really cool thing is that he's not actually stuck to his glider. He can be removed and he's like a posable figure on his own. The measurement of this figure, standing here, posed on this stand on the glider the way he is, right to the tip of his hat, he actually measures just over 9 inches. I think it's pretty well established that the Green Goblin is typically one of the Osborns. Of the Green Goblin! Not those Osborns. Next, we're going to have a look at Killer Croc. Killer Croc. I meant to say reptile. Oh yeah, sorry. The Lizard. The Lizard is your typical Marvel scientist testing shit on themselves gone wrong scenario. Unlike Hank McCoy or Bruce Banner, he becomes a bad guy. His true identity is Dr. Connors, who is a friend and confidant to Spider-Man and only has one arm. It was society who shamed this disabled... Can we say disabled? It was society who shamed him for having only one arm. So he did some DNA experimenting with lizards. Because, in reality, lizards can grow like their own tail back and shit. So he figures with some DNA splicing, he can grow his own arm back, but then he turns himself into a lizard man. Lizard man, grows his limbs back like a lizard can. This figure has been around for a while and is in dire need of some tender love and care, especially with the once very white-looking lab coat. And he's fallen quite a few times, so his joints are getting pretty loose and he falls over. But he usually stands pretty good because his tail pretty much acts like a third leg. So he stands. So, let me just say, I talk all the time about how many times all of my figures have fallen, and people probably think that I don't know how to pose a figure or some shit, but the reality is, it takes only one weak character to bring down an entire collection. I'm running out of room on my shelves here, so I pose them all pretty closely together. And when one falls, he falls into another, who falls into another, and it causes a chain reaction, which makes their joints and limbs even weaker, so that they're gonna fall over even easier next time, and then again knock over other people, and then they're knocking over the figures that have good joints and making them fall, which makes their joints weak, and then they fall over and knock over you. And I tell you, there's just nothing worse than being woken up from a dead sleep to just the sound of an entire shelf full of toys just collapsing on themselves. Sorry, where was I? Oh yes. Next, we're going to have a look at the Rhino. So for the Rhino, I don't really remember much about his story or what his power even is. Isn't he basically the Juggernaut, except instead of a giant helmet, he's just got a strap-on? A strap-on horn, people. This is one tall and hefty figure. He stands 8¼ inches right to the tip of his horn. So he's thick and he's tall and he hits the ground hard. And he's fallen only one time. And I had to glue his leg back on just to get him back in shape for this episode. Luckily, I had off-camera Mike with me, so we filmed a little bonus video of that repair job, which we'll post sometime. Maybe it's already out. Check our channel. Anyways, like I said, I don't know much about him as a character, so first person to tell me his real name in the comments wins my eternal gratitude and all the bragging rights. Come on, show us your nerd flex. Also, just a quick side note, I'm going to skip two of my favorite villains here, Venom and Carnage. Why? Because they're special and they get their own episode. Coming soon to a toy shelf near you. So instead next, we're going to skip right to my buddy, Electro. Electro, he controls electricity and shit. He stands 7½ inches right to the tip of his lightning bolt mask thing, I guess. This figure did not come with any accessories or alternate hands or alternate heads or anything. But he does come with this, power line, pole, transmitter thing. And surprisingly, clearly this is a stand for the figure, right? But it completely lacks one of those little nubs that would go into, one of the holes in his feet. There's clearly holes in his feet where a stand could be inserted to help stand this figure. And right here would be a perfect opportunity for that. But they really dropped the ball there. Come on, what is the deal, Diamond Select? And he actually does sometimes have a problem just standing here. Even though he has something to lean against, he always wants to fall forward. So I don't know if you can tell, but I've just got this little black twist tie there, so when he tries to fall forward, it catches him. And if I didn't have the twist tie here, he would just fall over, and he would knock over other figures, who would fall and knock over other figures, you get the idea. He is a boss in the Sega Genesis classic Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin, very underrated game in my opinion, often overshadowed by the much more successful Maximum Carnage, side note. But I know he is one of the earliest villains introduced, within the first 10 issues of the comics or something. So the final figure we're going to have a look at today is, cue the music. Take my hand, hiya, rough to Neverland. So here we've got my newest Marvel Select figure and Spider-Man villain, It's the Sandman. He's a man who's made out of sand.
It feels like a bag of sand.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
This was never really a favorite villain for me. I mean, he's almost like completely interchangeable with Hydro Man, who can do all the same shit, except he controls water and he controls sand. Bullets will just go right through this guy, and I can only imagine that getting hit by one of his fists feels like getting hit with a sack full of rocks. He's definitely not a villain that you want to mess with. And this character is very unfortunately also wrapped up in the mess that was Spider-Man 3. They friggin' retconned the Uncle Ben origin story to include this Flint Marko guy, and then I had a really hard time following his motivations in this movie, and at the end, he isn't even defeated. It's just like Spider-Man just kind of convinces him to like float away in the wind or some shit. But this is the most recent Spidey villain I purchased, and even with not remembering all that much about this character's origin story, he is still an absolutely iconic villain from this franchise. And this figure, he stands about 7 inches tall. He comes with a bunch of interchangeable parts. Like I said, he's made out of sand, he can turn into sand and control sand, he just does a bunch of stuff with sand. His whole bottom half, his torso will just pop right off his legs and should mount right onto this, and he just looks like he's a big vortex of sand. He also comes with some basic alternate hands, which are just some typical various hand positions, and then he comes with some sand hands. Some mean, scary-looking sandy hands. And then he comes with some of these bigger wrecking ball and spiked hammer-shaped hands, which are things that you see him do very commonly. So these are very accurate, pretty cool accessories to come with this character. And finally, he comes with a basic sand-looking stand. It's a stand that looks like some sand that holds the Sandman. The Sandman. Overall, I would say very cool character. Very cool figure. It's definitely going to make a great addition to the collection. And voila! This is my Spider-Man collection by Diamond Select Toys. Nothing left to do now but go and find them a home on the shelf. It is great to be back for a 3rd season. We've missed you. And if you enjoyed this episode, click it! Click the button! Click the goddamn button! And make sure to catch our upcoming Venom/Carnage episode, plus a bunch more from the Marvel Select collection, and just a metric load of other great toy lines coming up. Plus, check out the 40 other episodes that we've already released. So many different franchises, so many different toy lines, there is bound to be something just for you. Thanks again for hanging out with us on the Toy Shelf, and remember, no matter how many times your parents tell you to move out, grow up, and get a real job, you're never too old to play with toys.